After 25 years away, Lila Monroe returns to a crumbling farmhouse and unknowingly buys the land that once belonged to her first love. But when Jack Colton shows up in the rain, demanding answers, the truth threatens to bloom, or break them. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The for sale sign swayed in the gentle South Carolina breeze as Lila Monroe stepped out of her rental car. At 41, she knew this was either the bravest or the most foolish thing she'd ever done. The farmhouse in front of her looked even more rundown than it had in the auction photos. Peeling white paint, a sagging porch and shutters hanging at odd angles. But it was hers, all of it. Well, this is it, she said to herself, tucking a strand of her chestnut hair behind her ear. Home sweet home. The real estate agent had left the keys under a flower pot by the front door, just as promised. Lila had wanted to be alone for this moment, her first step into her new life. The door creaked as she pushed it open. Inside, dust particles danced in the rays of sunlight streaming through the dirty windows. The wooden floors were scuffed and faded but solid. A stone fireplace dominated one wall of the living room. It was empty now, but Lila could imagine it filled with warmth on cold winter nights. "It's nothing a little elbow grease can't fix," she told herself, though her voice echoed in the empty space. She walked through each room slowly, mentally making lists of what needed to be fixed. The kitchen had outdated appliances from at least 20 years ago. The bathroom sink dripped steadily. The stairs to the second floor groaned under her weight, but when she stepped out onto the back porch, Lila's breath caught in her throat. The land stretched out before her, 5 acres of overgrown fields bordered by woods. And there, not far from the house, was a garden. It was wild and untended, but she could make out roses climbing over a broken trellis, stubbornly blooming. Despite the neglect, for the first time since signing the papers, Lila felt certain this was what she needed after her divorce from Richard. After 15 years of marriage that ended with him leaving her for his 26-year-old assistant. After the empty apartment in Charlotte that never felt like home. "This is the fresh start I've been waiting for," she whispered. That night, Lila slept on an air mattress in what would become her bedroom. Her few boxes of belongings were stacked in a corner. As she drifted off to sleep, she felt something she hadn't in a long time: hope. The next morning, she woke to the sound of birds chirping outside her window. There was so much to do, but she couldn't wait to get started. First on her list was cleaning. She tied her hair back, put on old jeans and a t-shirt, and got to work. By midday, she had made progress on the kitchen. The countertops gleamed, and she'd scrubbed away years of grime from the sink. She was taking a break on the back porch, drinking a glass of iced tea, when she noticed movement at the edge of her property. A man was walking along the fence line. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a purposeful stride. Something about him seemed familiar, but Lila couldn't place it. She shielded her eyes from the sun to get a better look. The man stopped and seemed to be examining a section of the fence. Then he looked up toward the house, toward her, and froze. Lila raised her hand in a tentative wave. The man didn't wave back. Instead, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the trees. "Strange," Lila murmured. She made a mental note to introduce herself to her neighbors soon. The last thing she needed was to get off on the wrong foot with the locals. Over the next few days, Lila fell into a routine. She would work on the house in the morning, then spend the afternoons in town buying supplies and getting to know Oak Ridge, the small community she now called home. It was a charming place, with a main street lined with mom-and-pop shops and a diner called Mabel's where everyone seemed to know everyone else. Lila felt the curious stares when she walked in, but most people were friendly enough. "So you must be the lady who bought the old Colton place," said Mabel herself, a robust woman in her 60s, as she poured Lila a cup of coffee. "Yes, that's me," Lila smiled. "I'm Lila Monroe." "Monroe?" Mabel's eyebrows shot up. "Any relation to the Monroes who used to live out on County Road 8? Lila's hand tightened around her coffee cup. "Yes, that was my family. We moved away when I was 16. "I remember now." Mabel nodded, her eyes widening with recognition. "So you're Thomas and Eleanor's daughter. Goodness, it's been what, 25 years? "Something like that," Lila said, trying to keep her voice casual. She hadn't expected to be recognized so quickly. The memories of why her family had left Oakridge were still painful even after all these years. "Well, welcome back," Mabel said, her smile warm. "Though I have to say it's a surprise to see a Monroe at the Colton place." "The Colton place?" Lila repeated, a chill running down her spine. "It couldn't be." "Sure, honey, that farm belonged to the Colton family for generations. Such a shame what happened to Jack after his wife passed. Just couldn't keep up with the bills, poor man." Lila felt dizzy suddenly. Jack Colton. Her Jack. The boy with the laughing eyes who had been her first love. The boy she had written a goodbye letter to when her family fled town in disgrace. The boy who had never replied. "Are you all right, dear?" "You've gone white as a sheet," Mabel said, concerned. "I'm fine," Lila managed. "Just tired from all the work on the house. Do you know where Jack is now?" "Last I heard, he was staying with his brother in Columbia. His daughter, Gracie, lives with his in-laws in Charleston. Daughter, wife." Of course, Jack had moved on with his life. What had she expected? Back at the farm, Lila couldn't focus on her tasks. Her mind kept drifting to Jack. Was he the man she had seen at the fence line? Had he been checking on his old property? She found herself wandering to the rose garden. It seemed less random now, knowing it had belonged to Jack's wife. Lila felt like an intruder suddenly, tending to another woman's. Flowers? As she was pulling weeds, the sky darkened. A storm was moving in quickly, the way they often did in the south. Lila gathered her tools and hurried back to the house just as the first fat raindrops began to fall. She had barely made it inside when there was a sharp knock at the front door. Frowning, Lila went to answer it, wondering who would be visiting in this weather. When she opened the door, she nearly stumbled back in shock. There, standing on her porch, was Jack Colton. She would have known him anywhere despite the years that had changed him. His dark hair was now streaked with silver at the temples, and lines fanned out from the corners of his eyes. But those eyes, blue as a summer sky, were exactly as she remembered them. He was soaking wet from the rain, his shirt clinging to a frame that was still strong despite the years. But it was the expression on his face that froze Lila to the spot. Anger, pain, and something else she couldn't quite define. "Jack," she whispered, the name feeling both strange and familiar on her lips. "What are you doing here, Lila?" His voice was deeper than she remembered, rough with emotion. "What are you doing on my land?" Lila gripped the doorframe for support. "Your land? I bought this place at auction. I had no idea it was yours." Lightning flashed, illuminating Jack's face. He didn't believe her. "You expect me to believe that? After all these years, you just happened to buy my farm?" "I swear, Jack, I didn't know," Lila said, her heart pounding. "Please come in out of the rain. We need to talk." For a moment, she thought he would refuse, but another crack of thunder decided for him. He stepped past her into the house, bringing with him the scent of rain and memories so powerful they made Lila's knees weak. They stood in the entryway, water pooling at Jack's feet on the hardwood floor she had just polished yesterday. "I'll get you a towel," Lila said, needing a moment to collect herself. When she returned, Jack was standing in the living room, looking around at the changes she had already made. The fresh paint on the walls, the old couch she had found at a thrift store, the vase of wildflowers on the mantel. She handed him the towel, careful not to let their fingers touch. "How did you find out I was here?" she asked as he roughly dried his hair. "Small town," he said flatly. "Word gets around. Mabel called me." Of course. Mabel had probably been on the phone seconds after Lila left the diner. "I really didn't know." "This was your farm, Jack," Lila said again. "I came back to South Carolina after my divorce. I wanted a fresh start. When I saw this place at auction, it just felt right." Jack's jaw tightened. "A fresh start? Just like that? You waltz back into town after 25 years and buy the place that's been in my family for generations." "I'm sorry," Lila said, feeling the inadequacy of the words. "I heard about your wife. I'm so sorry, Jack." He looked away, his profile harsh in the dim light. Don't pretend you care now." "I'm not pretending," Lila said, hurt by his assumption. "I know what it's like to lose someone." Jack turned back to her, eyes flashing. "Do you? Because last I checked, you were the one who did the leaving." "That's not fair," Lila said, her own anger rising. "You have no idea what happened back then, why we had to leave." You're right, I don't, Jack shot back, because you never told me. One day you were there, and the next you were gone. No goodbye. Nothing. I wrote you a letter, Lila exclaimed. I poured my heart out to you. I explained everything. I asked you to wait for me. Jack stared at her, confusion mixing with the anger in his eyes. What letter? I never got any letter from you. Lila felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath her. You never got my letter, but I gave it to your brother to give to you. I couldn't risk my father finding out I was contacting you. My brother? Jack's voice was dangerously quiet. Tim never gave me any letter. The implications of what he was saying washed over Lila like ice water. All these years, she had thought Jack had read her letter and chosen not to follow her, that he had moved on without a second thought. But if he never received it, you were supposed to come back, Jack said, his voice raw with decades-old hurt. You promised me that summer. You promised we'd always be together. I would have come back if you had asked me to, Lila whispered. I thought you didn't want me anymore. They stood there, the storm raging outside, mirroring the turbulence of emotions between them. 25 years of misunderstandings and missed chances hung in the air. Finally, Jack broke the silence. It doesn't matter now. That was a lifetime ago. We were just kids. But the way he looked at her told a different story. It did matter. It had always mattered. What happens now? Lila asked. With the farm, I mean. Jack ran a hand through his damp hair. The farm is yours, fair and square. I'm just passing through town, checking on some things before heading back to Columbia. And your daughter, Gracie, right? Mabel mentioned she's living with her grandparents. A shadow passed over Jack's face. She's better off there. They can give her stability, a real home. But she's your daughter, Lila said softly. Doesn't she need her father too? Jack's expression hardened. You don't know anything about my life, Lila. You lost that right a long time ago. The words stung, but Lila couldn't deny the truth in them. She didn't know this man anymore. The boy she had loved was buried somewhere beneath years of joy and pain she hadn't been part of. You're right, she conceded. I don't know you anymore, but I'd like to. Jack looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. I should go, he said finally. The rain's letting up. Lila walked him to the door, 1,000 questions on the tip of her tongue. But she held them back. There would be time. She wasn't going anywhere. At the doorway, Jack paused. The roses, he said, not looking at her. They need to be pruned before the heat of summer. And the fence on the east side is weak. It won't keep out the deer. It was as close to a peace offering as she was going to get. Lila nodded. Thank you, I'll remember that. He stepped out onto the porch, then turned back. For a moment, Lila caught a glimpse of the boy she had known, uncertain, vulnerable. Why did you come back, Lila? Really? She could have told him about her failed marriage, about the emptiness of her life in Charlotte, about the yearning for something real and solid that had led her here. Instead, she told him the simple truth. I needed to find home again. Something flickered in Jack's eyes, recognition, perhaps, or understanding. Without another word, he walked down the steps and toward a truck parked at the edge of the driveway. Lila watched until his taillights disappeared down the long drive, feeling as if she had just weathered a storm of her own. Jack Colton was back, in her life, bringing with him all the questions and regrets of the past, and somewhere a letter she had written 25 years ago had never reached its destination. A letter that might have changed everything. Lila closed the door against the damp night air, already knowing that this was just the beginning. The past had a way of demanding to be faced, and here, on this land that had once belonged to the boy she had loved, she would finally have to face hers. The week after Jack's visit, Lila threw herself into work on the farmhouse. She painted walls, fixed leaky faucets, and scrubbed floors until her hands were raw. Anything to keep her mind off the past that had come rushing back like a flood. Every morning she checked the driveway, half expecting to see Jack's truck, but it never appeared. According to Mabel at the diner, Jack had gone back to Columbia after only spending 2 days in town. He's not much for socializing these days, Mabel told her over a slice of apple pie. Not since Caroline died. Caroline. Was his wife? Lila asked, trying to sound casual. Mabel nodded. Sweet woman, kindergarten teacher. The whole town loved her. Cancer took her 3 years ago. Jack was never the same after that. Lila looked down at her coffee, feeling an unexpected pang of jealousy toward a woman she'd never met, a woman who had shared a life with Jack, given him a daughter, planted roses in their garden. And their daughter, Gracie? 14 now, smart as a whip, just like her mama. Jack's in-laws took her in after Caroline passed. Jack was in no state to raise a child alone. Mabel leaned closer, lowering her voice. Between you and me, I think he just gave up on everything. That night, Lila stood at her kitchen window, looking out at the land that had once been Jack's family home. She thought about how he must have felt watching it slip away, another loss on top of losing his wife. A knock at the door startled her. Her heart jumped, thinking it might be Jack. But when she opened the door, she found an older man with a weathered face and a friendly smile. Evening, ma'am. Name's Earl Peterson. I farm the land next door. He extended a calloused hand, which Lila shook. Thought I'd come by and introduce myself. See if you need any help getting settled. That's very kind of you, Mr. Peterson. Call. Me, Earl. Everybody does. He glanced over her shoulder at the house. You've been working hard. Place is looking better already. Lila invited him in for coffee, grateful for the company. As they sat at her kitchen table, Earl shared stories about the area, about the Colton farm in its better days. Jack's daddy, old Henry Colton, he could grow anything, Earl said with admiration. Had the magic touch, he did. Jack inherited that gift. Before everything went south, this was one of the most productive small farms in the county. What happened? Lila asked. I mean, other than his wife's illness, Earl sighed. Bad timing, mostly. Caroline got sick right when the economy took a dive. Medical bills piled up. Jack had to take time off to care for her, then to grieve. Farm started losing money. Bank doesn't care about personal tragedies when it comes to paying the mortgage, Lila. It felt a knot form in her stomach. She had unknowingly benefited from Jack's misfortune. Her fresh start had come at the cost of his family legacy. You know, Earl said, studying her face, Jack was quite something when he was younger. All the girls had their eye on him, but he only had eyes for one. Lila nearly choked on her coffee. Is that so? Earl nodded, his eyes twinkling knowingly. Local girl. They were inseparable one summer. Then her family left town suddenly, quite the scandal at the time. So people still remembered. Lila wondered what else they remembered about her family's hasty departure. Her father embezzled money. From the bank he managed, Earl continued. Nearly bankrupted half the town, the Monroes, if I recall correctly. Lila set down her cup with a shaky hand. Yes, the Monroes, my family. Earl's eyebrows shot up. Well, I'll be. You're that Monroe girl? He let out a low whistle. No wonder Jack's been in such a state since he heard you bought his place. It wasn't intentional, Lila said defensively. I had no idea this was his farm when I bought it. Earl studied her for a moment, then nodded. Life has a funny way of bringing things full circle, doesn't it? You know, you broke that boy's heart when you left. I wrote him a letter, Lila said, the old hurt rising to the surface. I just found out he never received it. That explains a few things, Earl mused. He waited for you, you know, for longer than most would consider reasonable. Lila felt tears sting her eyes. All those years wasted because of a letter that never reached its destination. After Earl left, Lila couldn't sleep. She went outside to the rose garden, now bathed in moonlight. These were Caroline's roses, the woman Jack had eventually loved. After Lila had gone, she knelt down and began pulling weeds from around the base of the bushes, remembering Jack's advice about pruning them. The next morning, Lila drove into town with a new purpose. She headed straight for the hardware store, where she bought pruning shears, gardening gloves, and fence repair materials. If she couldn't change the past, at least she could honor it by taking care of what mattered to Jack. As she was loading her purchases into her car, a sleek black SUV pulled up beside her. A woman about Lila's age stepped out, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her clothes expensive looking. Lila Monroe, the woman asked, her tone cool and evaluating. Yes, Lila replied, instantly on guard. I'm Vanessa Rothschild. I'm Jack's sister-in-law. Caroline was my sister. Lila felt her chest tighten. It's nice to meet you. Vanessa's expression suggested she didn't share the sentiment. I hear you're fixing up the old place. Yes, I am. I don't know what your game is coming back here and buying Jack's farm, but I want you to know that we're watching. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. Jack and Gracie have been through enough. I don't have a game, Lila said, her temper flaring. I had no idea this was Jack's property when I bought it. And I certainly had no intention of causing anyone pain, Vanessa scoffed. Really? The girl who broke Jack's heart just happens to buy his farm 25 years later. Forgive me if I find that hard to believe. Before Lila could respond, Vanessa's phone rang. She glanced at it, then back at Lila. That's Gracie's school, I have to take this. As Vanessa walked away to answer her call, Lila leaned against her car, trying to process this confrontation. It seemed Jack's in-laws were very protective of him and Gracie. She wondered how much control they had over Jack's relationship with his daughter. Vanessa returned, her expression troubled. That was Gracie's principal. She's been suspended for fighting with another student. Despite their tense introduction, Lila felt genuine concern. Is she okay? Physically, yes, Vanessa sighed. But she's been acting out a lot lately. My husband and I are at our wits' end. I need to call Jack. Is there anything I can do to help? Lila offered. Vanessa looked at her with surprise, then suspicion. Haven't you done enough? She walked away, leaving Lila standing there feeling like an intruder in a story that had continued long after she'd left. Back at the farm, Lila spent the afternoon repairing the fence on the east side, just as Jack had mentioned. The physical work helped clear her mind. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the fields, she heard the sound of a vehicle coming up the drive. Jack's truck pulled up beside the house. This time, he wasn't alone. A teenage girl sat in the passenger seat, her arms crossed. Her expression stormy. Lila set down her hammer and watched as Jack said something to the girl. She shook her head vehemently. Jack sighed, then got out of the truck and walked toward Lila. The girl remained inside, staring straight ahead. I hope you don't mind us stopping by, Jack said when he reached her. His voice was gruff but not angry like the last time. Of course not, Lila said, trying to ignore the way her heart raced at the sight of him. Is everything okay? Jack ran, a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made Lila's chest ache. Not really, that's my daughter, Gracie. She got suspended from school today. Her grandparents are out of town and He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. You needed a place to bring her, Lila finished for him. Jack nodded. I'm staying at a motel in town, but it's not the best environment for a teenage girl. I thought maybe seeing the farm might help. It was her home too once. Of course you can bring her here, Lila said. I was just about to make dinner. There's plenty for both of you. Jack looked at her gratefully. She's having a hard time. After her mother died, I wasn't there for her the way I should have been. Now she barely talks to me. I understand, Lila said softly. Loss can make us do things we later regret. Their eyes met, and for a moment it felt like they were talking about more than just Gracie. I see you're fixing the fence, Jack said, changing the subject. I took your advice, Lila smiled. About the roses too. I've been learning as I go. Jack glanced toward the rose garden. Caroline loved those roses. She planted them the year we moved in. They're beautiful, Lila said. I can see why she loved them. Jack turned back to the truck. Let me try to get Gracie to come inside. Lila watched as he spoke to his daughter. Eventually, with obvious reluctance, Gracie got out of the truck. Up close, Lila could see that she had Jack's blue eyes and a stubborn set to her jaw that reminded Lila of the boy Jack had once been. Gracie, this is Lila Monroe. She's the new owner of the farm. Gracie barely looked at Lila. Whatever. It's nice to meet you, Gracie, Lila said, choosing to ignore the teenager's attitude. I was about to make dinner. Do you like spaghetti? Gracie shrugged. I guess. You can help if you want, Lila offered. Or you can look around. This was your home once. You must have memories here. Something flickered in Gracie's eyes. Interest, perhaps, or pain. I don't remember much. I was only 11 when we left. The three of them went inside. an awkward trio bound by threads of the past. Lila busied herself in the kitchen, aware of Jack's eyes following her movements. Gracie wandered around the house, touching things, staring out windows. "You've done a lot with the place," Jack said, leaning against the kitchen counter as Lila chopped vegetables. "It's coming along," she said, "though there's still so much to do." "The loose board on the back steps," Jack said. "It always was a hazard." "I noticed that. It's on my list." They fell into a surprisingly comfortable rhythm, Jack setting the table while Lila finished cooking. It felt domestic, almost as if they had done this many times before. "Can I use your bathroom?" Gracie asked, the first words she'd spoken unprompted. "Since arriving, of course," Lila said. "It's upstairs, first door on the right." When Gracie was out of earshot, Jack sighed heavily. "She's so angry all the time, I don't know how to reach her." "She's hurting," Lila said. "And she's a teenager. It's a tough combination." Vanessa and Robert, Caroline's sister and brother-in-law, they blame me for not being there for her after Caroline died. "What happened?" Lila asked gently. Jack's expression darkened. "I fell apart. I couldn't take care of myself, let alone a grieving child." They stepped in. "At first it was just temporary until I got back on my feet. But then I lost the farm and I had nowhere to take her. They have a big house, a stable life. I had nothing to offer her." "You're her father, Jack. That's what you have to offer." Before Jack could respond, Gracie came back downstairs, her face flushed. It was clear she had been crying. "What's wrong, Gracie?" Jack asked, alarmed. "Nothing," she snapped. "I'm fine." "Dinner's ready," Lila said, hoping to diffuse the tension. "Let's eat." Over the meal, Lila tried to draw Gracie out, asking about school, her hobbies, anything that might get the girl talking. Gracie gave mostly one-word answers, but gradually seemed to relax a little. "Dad says you knew each other when you were kids," she said suddenly, looking directly at Lila for the first time. Lila glanced at Jack, surprised. "Yes, we did. We were friends?" "More than friends," Jack said quietly. "Lila was my first love." Gracie's eyebrows shot up. "Seriously, you never told me that." "It was a long time ago," Jack said, his eyes on Lila, "before I met your mother." "What happened?" Gracie asked, suddenly interested in the conversation. "I moved away," Lila said simply. "My family had to leave town suddenly." "Because of what?" "Her father did," Jack added, a hint of the old bitterness in his voice. Lila stiffened. "Yes, because of what my father did. He made a terrible mistake, and a lot of people suffered for it, including me." "Is that why you came back?" Gracie asked. "To make up for what he did?" "No," Lila shook her head. "I came back because I needed a fresh start. My marriage ended, and I wanted to go somewhere that felt, I don't know, real. When I saw this farm at auction, something about it called to me. I didn't know it was your family's place until after I bought it." "Weird," Gracie commented. "Like fate or something." Jack and Lila exchanged a look across the table. Was it fate, or just a cruel twist in a story that had already taken too many painful turns? After dinner, Gracie asked if she could see the rose garden. "It's getting dark," Jack said. "Maybe next time." "There's a full moon," Lila pointed out. "We can see just fine. I have a flashlight too." The three of them walked out to the garden together. Lila noticed how Gracie stayed close to her father, despite her earlier coldness. There was a bond there, frayed but not broken. "Mom loved these roses," Gracie said, bending to touch one of the blooms. "She used to cut them and put them all over the house. It always smelled so good." "I've been trying to take care of them," Lila said. "Your dad gave me some advice about pruning them." Gracie looked up at her father. "You did?" Jack nodded. "The roses deserve to be cared for properly." "We could fix this trellis," Gracie said, examining the broken structure. "It wouldn't be hard. Just need some new wooden nails." "We could," Jack agreed, surprised by her interest. "If Ms. Monroe doesn't mind." "Lila," she corrected him. "And no, I don't mind at all. I'd welcome the help, actually." Gracie turned to Lila, her expression serious. "Did you really not know this was our farm when you bought it?" "I really didn't," Lila assured her. "I would never have intentionally taken something so important from your family." Gracie studied her face, then nodded slowly. I believe you. Later, as Jack and Gracie prepared to leave, Lila handed Jack a piece of paper with her phone number on it. If Gracie wants to come back and work on the roses, she's welcome anytime, she said. You both are. Jack pocketed the paper, his fingers brushing against hers. Thank you. For dinner, for being kind to Gracie. She's a great kid, Jack. You should be proud. I am, he said softly. I just wish I'd been a better father to her. It's not too late, Lila told him. She still needs you. As they drove away, Lila stood on the porch watching until the taillights disappeared down the long driveway. Something had shifted tonight. A door that had been firmly closed for 25 years had opened just a crack. The next morning, Lila was surprised to hear her phone ringing. It was a number she didn't recognize. Hello? Ms. Monroe? The voice was young, hesitant. It's Gracie Colton. Gracie, Lila said, pleased. How are you? Fine, I was wondering. She paused. I was wondering if I could come over this weekend to work on the rose trellis. Of course, Lila said. I'd love that. My dad has to work, Gracie continued. But my grandma said she could drop me off if that's okay. Lila hesitated. Jack's mother-in-law, the woman whose sister had confronted Lila in town. This could be awkward. That's fine, she said finally. I'll be here all day Saturday. Cool, Gracie said. And Miss Monroe? Thanks for being nice to my dad. He doesn't have many friends anymore. The call ended, leaving Lila with a lump in her throat. What had started as a simple farm purchase was becoming increasingly complicated. She was now entangled in the lives of Jack and his daughter in ways she never could have anticipated. As she went about her chores that day, Lila kept thinking about the letter, the one she had written to Jack all those years ago, pouring her heart out, explaining why she had to leave, promising to come back when things settled down. The letter his brother had apparently never delivered. Why would Tim have kept it from Jack? What else might have happened that she didn't know about? Standing in what had once been Jack's home, surrounded by the ghosts of his past and hers, Lila realized that buying this farm had been more than just a fresh start. It was a chance to finally face the truth about what had happened 25 years ago. A chance to heal old wounds. Perhaps even a chance for redemption. That night, as Lila lay in bed listening to the crickets chirping outside her window, she thought about how strange life could be. How paths that had diverged could suddenly converge again when you least expected. As she thought about Jack, the boy she had loved and the man he had become, about his daughter, struggling to find her place in a world that had taken her mother too soon, about the roses that continued to bloom year after year despite neglect and hardship. And she thought about second chances and whether it was ever truly too late to find your way back home. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze, perfect weather for working in the garden. Lila woke up early, feeling a strange mix of excitement and nervousness about Gracie's visit. She made a batch of chocolate chip cookies, not knowing if Gracie would like them, but remembering that Jack had always had a sweet tooth when they were young. Around 10 o'clock, a sleek silver Mercedes pulled into the driveway. Lila smoothed her hands over her jeans and went outside to greet her visitors. Gracie hopped out of the passenger seat, wearing denim shorts and a faded t-shirt, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger today, more like a typical 14-year-old than the sullen teenager from a few days ago. From the driver's side emerged an elegant woman in her 60s, her silver blonde hair cut in a stylish bob. Her expression was guarded as she approached. "You must be Mrs. Bennett," Lila said, extending her hand. "I'm Lila Monroe." "Margaret Bennett," the woman replied, her handshake firm but brief. "Gracie has been talking non-stop about coming to work on the rose garden." "I'm glad to have her help," Lila smiled. "I'm still learning how to take care of everything around here." Margaret's gaze swept over the farmhouse and surrounding property, her eyes lingering on the changes Lila had made. "You've been busy." "It's a lot of work, but I enjoy it." An awkward silence fell between them. Gracie shifted from foot to foot, clearly uncomfortable with the tension. "Would you like to come in for coffee?" Lila offered. Margaret hesitated, then shook her head. "I have errands to run in town. I'll pick Gracie up at 3. "I could drive her home," Lila suggested. If that would be easier for you. That won't be necessary, Margaret said firmly. She turned to Gracie. Be good, listen to Ms. Monroe. Gracie rolled her eyes. I know, Grandma. Margaret's expression softened as she looked at her granddaughter. She kissed Gracie's forehead, then nodded stiffly to Lila before returning to her car. As the Mercedes disappeared down the driveway, Gracie let out a visible sigh of relief. Sorry about my grandma. She's a little intense. Don't worry about it, Lila assured her. I made cookies if you're hungry, and I got all the supplies for fixing the rose trellis. Gracie's face lit up. Cookies sound good. Inside, as Gracie munched on a cookie at the kitchen table, Lila noticed how the girl's eyes darted around, taking in the changes to her former home. It looks different, Gracie said, but also the same somehow. I've tried to respect the character of the house, Lila said. I hope you don't mind the changes I've made. Gracie shrugged. It's your house now. Her tone was matter of fact, but Lila caught a hint of sadness beneath the words. It was your home first, Lila said gently. Your memories matter. If there's anything about the house that's especially important to you, I'd like to know. Gracie seemed surprised by the offer. She thought for a moment, then said, There's a mark on the wall in what used to be my bedroom. It's behind where my bed was. Mom and I put it there. It's our heights year by year. Dad probably doesn't even know about it. I'd like to see it, Lila said. They went upstairs to what was now Lila's guest bedroom. Gracie went straight to a spot along the wall and crouched down. Lila had painted the room a soft blue, but she hadn't moved any of the furniture yet. Here, Gracie said, pointing to a series of marks and dates penciled onto the wall. The highest one read, Gracie, age. 11, and beneath it, Mom 56. The last one we did together, Gracie said quietly, a few months before she got diagnosed. Lila knelt beside her, touched by this hidden piece of family history. We should preserve this, maybe frame it somehow so it's protected. Gracie looked at her with surprise. You'd do that? Of course, Lila said. It's part of the house's story, part of your story. Gracie smiled, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Thanks. Later, as they worked together in the rose garden, Lila found that Gracie was easy to talk to. The girl knew a surprising amount about plants. Mom taught me, she explained, as she expertly pruned a rose bush. She loved gardening. Said it was like therapy, watching things grow. She sounds like a wonderful person, Lila said, careful to keep her tone neutral. It felt strange to praise the woman who had shared her life with Jack, but she genuinely wanted to honor Gracie's mother's memory. She was, Gracie said simply. After a moment, she added, Dad loved her a lot. That's why he fell apart when she died. Grief can be overwhelming, Lila said, thinking of her own pain after her divorce, though she knew it wasn't the same as losing someone to death. I was mad at him for a long time, Gracie continued, not looking up from her work. For giving, up for letting Grandma and Grandpa take me, for selling the farm. And now? Lila asked gently. Gracie sighed. I don't know, I'm still mad sometimes. But I also feel bad for him, he's so lonely. She glanced at Lila. He seemed different the other night, when we were here. Less sad. Lila wasn't sure how to respond to that. Had her presence really made a difference for Jack? What about you? Gracie asked suddenly. You said your marriage ended. Do you have kids? Lila shook her head. No. My husband and I, we tried for a while, but it never happened for us. That sucks, Gracie said with teenage bluntness. You'd be a good mum. The words touched Lila more deeply than Gracie could know. Thank you. That's a very kind thing to say. They worked in companionable silence for a while, the only sounds the snip of pruning shears and the occasional bird song. So you and my dad, Gracie said finally, her tone casual. Were you like high school sweethearts or something? Lila smiled at the memory. Sort of. We were 16 when we met. I had just moved to town with my parents. Jack's family had lived here forever. He was so confident, so at home in his own skin. I was this awkward city girl who didn't know a thing about farm life. But you liked him. Yes, Lila admitted. Very much. And by some miracle, he liked me too. What happened? Why? Did you leave? Lila hesitated, unsure how much to share. But Gracie deserved honesty. My father did something terrible. He worked at the local bank and he took money that wasn't his. When he was caught, we had to leave town quickly. There was a lot of anger directed at my family. Gracie's eyes widened. Wow, that's intense. Did your dad go to jail? Yes, Lila said, the old pain surfacing again. For 8 years. It broke my mother. She never recovered from the shame of it all. That's not your fault, though, Gracie pointed out. You didn't do anything wrong. No. But when your parent does something bad, people look at you differently. Like maybe you're bad too. Lila sighed. Anyway, I wrote your dad a letter before I left, explaining everything. I asked him to wait for me, told him I'd come back when things settled down. But he never got it, Gracie finished. Because his brother didn't give it to him. That's messed up. Yes, it is, Lila agreed. I don't know why Tim would have kept the letter from Jack. They were close, as far as I knew. Gracie set down her pruning shears. Maybe you should ask him. Tim. Lila was surprised by the suggestion. I don't even know if he still lives around here. He does, Gracie said. He owns the hardware store in town, Thompson Hardware. Dad doesn't talk to him much, though. Family drama, I guess. Lila felt her heart race at the thought of confronting Tim after all these years. What would she say? But the questions that had haunted her for decades demanded answers. Maybe I will, she said. By early afternoon, they had made good progress on the rose garden. The trellis was repaired, the bushes were pruned, and the weeds had been cleared away. Lila and Gracie sat on the back porch, drinking lemonade and admiring their work. It looks good, Gracie said with satisfaction. Mom would be happy. I think so too, Lila agreed. Thank you for your help. You know a lot more about gardening than I do. I could come back, Gracie offered, to help more. If you want, I'd like that very much. Gracie tapped her fingers against her glass. Maybe next time Dad could come too. He's good at fixing things, better than me. Lila smiled. The invitation is always open for both of you. When Margaret arrived to pick up Gracie, the girl surprised Lila with a quick hug before running to the car. Margaret noticed the gesture, her eyebrows raising slightly. She gave Lila a nod, not exactly warm but not hostile either, before driving away. Lila stood on the porch, watching them go, feeling as if something important had shifted today. A connection had formed, tentative but real. The next morning, Lila found herself driving into town with a determined set to her jaw. The conversation with Gracie had solidified her resolve. It was time to find out why her letter never reached Jack. Thompson Hardware was a large store on Main Street, its red brick facade freshly painted, its windows filled with displays of tools and home improvement materials. Lila took a deep breath before pushing open the door. The familiar smell of sawdust and metal greeted her. The store was busy with Sunday morning customers picking up supplies for weekend projects. Behind the main counter stood a man in his mid-40s. His dark hair shot through with grey, his face weathered but handsome. He was helping an elderly customer select the right kind of paint. Lila hung back, waiting for the transaction to finish. There was no doubt this was Tim Thompson. He had the same blue eyes as Jack, the same strong jawline. But where Jack's face showed the marks of grief and hardship, Tim's reflected prosperity and confidence. When the elderly customer moved away, Lila approached the counter. Tim looked up with a professional smile that quickly froze when he recognized her. Lila Monroe, he said, his voice strained. I heard you were back in town. Hello, Tim, Lila replied. It's been a long time. 25 years, give or take. His eyes darted around as if looking for an escape. What can I help you with today? Paint? Tools? Information, Lila said, keeping her voice low. About a letter I gave you 25 years ago. A letter you were supposed to give to Jack. Tim's face darkened. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do, Lila pressed. The night before my family left town, I came to your house. You promised you'd give the letter to Jack. A younger employee approached, but Tim waved him away. Let's talk. In my office, he said tersely. He led Lila to a small room at the back of the store. It was neatly organized with framed photos on the desk. Tim with a woman and 2 college-aged kids. A successful businessman with a picture-perfect family. Tim closed the door and turned to face her. "Why are you bringing this up now after all these years?" "Because Jack never got that letter," Lila said, "and I want to know why." Tim's expression hardened. "What difference does it make now? You left. Jack moved on. He married Caroline, had Gracie. End of story." "Except it's not the end, is it?" Lila challenged. "Jack lost Caroline, he lost the farm, your family's farm, and somehow I ended up buying it without knowing it was his." "Yeah, I heard about that," Tim scoffed. "Quite a coincidence." "It wasn't planned," Lila insisted. "But now I'm here and so is Jack, and we're both dealing with the ghosts of the past, including that letter." Tim sat heavily in his desk chair. What was in it anyway? "This mysterious letter that's so important." "The truth," Lila said simply. "About why I had to leave, about my feelings for Jack, about my promise to come back when I could." Tim was silent for a long moment, staring at a point on the wall behind. "Her?" Finally he sighed. "I was protecting him." "From what?" Lila demanded. "From knowing that I loved him? That I didn't just abandon him without a word? From you." Tim's voice rose. "From your family. Your father stole from half the people in this town, including our parents. Do you have any idea what that did to them? They lost their retirement savings. My dad had to keep working for 5 more years because of what Thomas Monroe did." Lila felt as if she'd been slapped. "I didn't know that," she said quietly. "I'm sorry." "Your sorry doesn't change what happened," Tim said bitterly. "And Jack, he was so blindly in love with you. If he'd gotten that letter, he would have waited for you. Maybe forever. I couldn't let him throw his life away on the daughter of the man who nearly ruined our family." Lila absorbed this, the pieces of the past falling into new patterns. "So you never gave him the letter? You let him think I just disappeared without a word?" "I did what I thought was right," Tim said defensively. "And look what happened. He met Caroline, had a beautiful daughter, built a good life." "Until Caroline died," Lila pointed out. "Until he lost everything, including the farm that had been in your family for generations." She leaned forward. "Where were you then, Tim? Where was your protection when your brother needed it most?" Tim's face flushed. "That's not fair. I tried to help. I offered him money, a job at the store. He refused. He was too proud. Or too hurt," Lila suggested. "Did you ever tell him about the letter? Even after all these years?" Tim looked away. "No. What would be the point?" "The point would be the truth," Lila said. "He deserved that much." They stared at each other across the desk, the weight of decades of secrets and resentments between them. "Does Jack know you're here talking to me?" Tim asked finally. "No," Lila admitted. "But I think he should know what happened to that letter. If you won't tell him, I will." Tim's jaw tightened. "You're going to turn him against me, his own brother." "You did that yourself," Lila said, standing up. "When you made a choice for him that wasn't yours to make." As she turned to leave, Tim called after her. "He loved her, you know, Caroline. It wasn't some consolation prize because he couldn't have you. They were happy." Lila paused at the door. "I'm glad," she said sincerely. "I never wanted Jack to be unhappy. I just wanted him to know the truth." Driving back to the farm, Lila's emotions churned. She had answers now. Answers she had wondered about for 25 years. But they had only led to more questions. How would Jack react when he learned what his brother had done? Would it change anything between them now? She was so lost in thought that she almost didn't notice the truck parked in her driveway when she arrived home. Jack's truck. He was sitting on her front porch steps waiting. When he saw her car, he stood, his expression unreadable. Lila parked and got out, her heart hammering. "Jack, this is a surprise. Gracie told me about yesterday," he said. "About how you two fixed up the rose garden, about how you're going to preserve the height chart on her bedroom wall." "It seemed important," Lila said simply. Jack looked at her, his eyes intense. "Why are you doing this, Lila? Being so kind to her, to me?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Lila said. "Because Gracie is a wonderful girl who deserves to have connections to her past. And because—" She hesitated. "Because what?" Jack pressed. "Because I care," Lila admitted. "About both of you." Jack ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture that still made Lila's heart skip. "I don't know how to do this," he confessed. How to be around you again after all these years. I know, Lila said. It's complicated. Where were you just now? Jack asked, noticing her distracted expression. For a moment, Lila considered not telling him, but there had been too many secrets already. I was at Thompson Hardware, she said, talking to Tim. Jack's expression darkened. Why? About the letter, Lila said. The one I wrote to you before I left town. The one I gave to Tim to deliver to you. Jack went very still. What are you saying? I asked him why you never received it, and he told me. Told you what? Jack's voice was dangerously quiet. That he kept it from you. Deliberately. Because he thought he was protecting you from me. From my family's scandal. Jack's face went through a rapid succession of emotions. Shock, disbelief, anger. He had no right, he said finally, his voice tight with fury. No, he didn't, Lila agreed. But he was hurt too. My father's actions affected your family directly. Tim was angry, and he made a decision that he thought was best for you. That wasn't his choice to make, Jack exploded. He let me think you just left without a word. Do you have any idea what that did to me? How long I waited for some kind of explanation? I'm sorry, Lila said, wishing she could erase all the pain of the past. If I had known, I would have found another way to get the letter to you. Jack paced across the porch, his body tense with anger. What did it say? This letter that my brother kept from me? Lila hesitated. It explained why we had to leave so suddenly, about my father's crime, and it told you that I loved you, that I would come back as soon as I could. And did you? Jack asked, his voice raw. Try to come back? Yes, Lila admitted. 2 years later, when things had settled down a bit, I called your house. Your mother answered. She told me you had moved on, that you were dating someone new, and that I should leave you alone. Jack looked stunned. She never told me you called. Another person trying to protect you, I suppose, Lila said with a sad smile. Jack leaned against the porch railing, absorbing this new information. All these years, he murmured, all these misunderstandings. I know, Lila said. I've thought about it so many times, how different things might have been if you'd gotten that letter. If your mother had told you I called. But then I might never have met Caroline, Jack said quietly. Never had Gracie. Exactly, Lila said, and I wouldn't wish that. Your daughter is wonderful, Jack, and from everything I've heard, Caroline was too. Jack looked at her, his expression softening. How did you get to be so wise, Lila Monroe? Not wise, Lila shook her head. Just older, and maybe a little less afraid of the truth. They stood in silence for a moment, the revelations of the day settling around them like autumn leaves. Would you like to come in? Lila offered. I can make coffee, or something stronger if you prefer. Jack hesitated, then nodded. Coffee would be good, and then maybe you can show me what you and Gracie did with the roses. Inside, as Lila prepared the coffee, Jack wandered around the living room, looking at the changes she had made. His eyes lingered on a framed photo she had placed on a side table, one of the few possessions she had brought with her. It was a picture of a much younger Lila standing by a lake, laughing at something off camera. Where was this taken? He asked. Lake Michigan, Lila said, bringing 2 mugs of coffee into the room. The summer after we left here, I was miserable trying to adjust to our new life. My mother insisted on a day at the beach, hoping it would cheer me up. It didn't really, but she took the picture anyway. Jack studied the photo. You look sad. Even though you're smiling. I was, Lila confirmed. I missed you. Every day. Their eyes met over the rim of their coffee cups. Something shifted in the air between them. A door opening, a possibility emerging. I'm going to talk to Tim, Jack said finally, about the letter, about everything. Are you sure that's a good idea? Lila asked, concerned by the anger still simmering beneath his calm exterior. No, Jack admitted, but it's necessary. There's been too much left unsaid in my family for too long. Lila understood. How many times had she wished for a chance to confront her own father about his betrayal? But he had died in prison before she had gathered the courage. Just remember, she said gently, he's still your brother. And whatever his reasons, he thought he was doing what was best for you. Jack's expression softened. When did you become the voice of forgiveness? Around the same time I realized how much energy it takes to stay angry, Lila said with a small smile, and how little it changes the past. They took their coffee to the back porch, where they could see the rose garden in the afternoon light. The freshly pruned bushes stood tall, their blooms vibrant against the green backdrop of the fields beyond. Gracie did a good job, Jack said with pride. She has her mother's touch with plants. She's a remarkable girl, Lila agreed. You should be proud of her. I am, Jack said. I just wish... He trailed off. Wish what? That I'd been a better father to her after Caroline died. That I hadn't let my own grief get in the way of being there for her. It's not too late, Lila said, echoing the words she had spoken to him before. She still needs you. And from what I can see, she still loves you very much. Jack looked at her, his eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and something deeper. Thank you, he said simply, for saying that, for being kind to Gracie, for what? Lila prompted when he didn't continue. For coming back, Jack finished. Even if you didn't know you were coming back to me. The words hung in the air, between them laden with meaning. Before Lila could respond, Jack's phone rang. He checked it, his expression shifting to concern. It's Vanessa. I should take this. Lila nodded, watching as he stepped away to answer the call. His side of the conversation was brief, mostly yes and I understand, and finally, I'll be right there. When he came back, his face was troubled. I have to go. Gracie had some kind of meltdown after they got home yesterday. She locked herself in her room and refuses to come out or talk to anyone except me. Is she okay? Lila asked, worried. Physically, yes, but obviously something's wrong. Jack ran a hand through his hair. I'm sorry to cut this short. Don't apologize, Lila said firmly. Gracie needs you, go. Jack hesitated, then impulsively reached for her hand. Thank you for understanding, and for everything today. The pay. Truth about the letter. It means more than I can say. His hand was warm around hers, calloused from years of hard work, but gentle too. For a moment, Lila felt 16 again, her heart racing at his touch. Call me later? She asked. Let me know how Gracie is, Jack nodded. I will. After he left, Lila sat alone on the porch, watching the shadows lengthen across the garden as the sun began its descent. So much had happened in just a few days. So many old wounds reopened, so many truths finally spoken. She thought about Tim, and the choice he had made all those years ago, about Jack's mother, turning Lila away when she tried to come back, about all the protections people put in place that sometimes caused more harm than good. And she thought about Jack, the boy she had loved, and the man he had become, about his grief and his regrets, about the way he looked at her now, as if seeing both who she had been and who she was. The phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. It was a number she didn't recognize. Hello? Ms. Monroe? The voice was young, female, and tearful. It's Gracie. Can I come stay with you for a while, please? Lila sat up straight, alarmed by the distress in the girl's voice. Gracie, what's wrong? Are you okay? No, Gracie said, her voice breaking. Everything's messed up. I can't stay here anymore. Dad's on his way, but Grandma and Grandpa are being horrible. They said... She choked back a sob. They said they're going to try to get custody of me. For real, forever. Oh, Gracie, Lila said, her heart aching for the girl. Where are you now? In my room. I locked the door. They think I'm just being dramatic, but I heard them talking. To their lawyer on the phone. Lila took a deep breath, knowing she needed to tread carefully. Your dad will be there soon. Talk to him. Tell him what you heard. But what if they're right? Gracie's voice was small now. What if I'm better off with them? Dad doesn't even have a real place for us to live. The words tumbled out of Lila's mouth before she could think them through. He could stay here. Both of you could. There's plenty of room. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Really? You'd let us? Lila's mind raced. Was she really offering to let Jack and his daughter move into her house? But even as she questioned her own impulsiveness, she knew it was right. Yes, she said firmly. This was your home, Gracie. It could be again. At least until your dad finds his feet. He's... Here? Gracie said suddenly. I hear his truck. I have to go. Wait, Lila said quickly. Do you want me to come over to support you when you talk to your dad? There was a pause, then a small, yes, please. Text me the address, Lila said. I'll be there as soon as I can. As she gathered her purse and keys, Lila wondered if she was crossing a line. Jack might not appreciate her involvement in this family crisis. The Bennetts would certainly see it as interference, but none of that mattered as much as the scared voice of a 14-year-old girl who had already lost so much. Gracie needed support, and Lila was determined to give it, whatever the consequences might be. Standing on the porch of the farmhouse that had once been Jack's home, Lila made a silent promise to herself. This time she wouldn't disappear. This time she would stay and face whatever came next, because some things, some people, were worth fighting for. With that thought giving her strength, she got into her car and drove toward the address Gracie had texted, toward Jack and his daughter, toward a future that suddenly seemed full of both challenges and possibilities. The Bennett home was a stately colonial in one of Charleston's most exclusive neighborhoods. As Lila pulled into the circular driveway, she spotted Jack's truck parked haphazardly near the entrance. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was sure to be an uncomfortable confrontation. Before she could even ring the doorbell, the front door swung open. Jack stood there, his face a mask of surprise. Lila, what are you doing here? Gracie called me, Lila explained. She was upset. She asked me to come. Jack's expression shifted from surprise to concern. When did she call you? Right after you left the farm. She said she overheard her grandparents talking about getting permanent custody. Jack's jaw tightened. Come in, it's tense in there. The interior of the Bennett home was as impressive as its exterior. Vaulted ceilings, marble floors, and expensive artwork on the walls. But Lila barely registered any of it as she followed Jack to a formal living room where Robert and Margaret Bennett sat rigidly on a white sofa. Their expressions turned cold when they saw Lila. What is she doing here? Margaret demanded. I invited her, Gracie said, stepping into the room from a connecting hallway. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, but her chin was lifted in defiance. This is a family matter, Robert Bennett said firmly. He was a distinguished-looking man in his late 60s, with silver hair and the same elegant bearing as his wife. Lila is my friend, Gracie insisted, and I want her here. Jack placed a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder. Where's Vanessa? He asked, looking around for his sister-in-law. She's not coming, Margaret said. She agrees with us that this needs to be handled within the family. Lila felt distinctly uncomfortable but stood her ground. She had promised Gracie she would be there for her. What exactly needs to be handled? Jack asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Robert cleared his throat. Jack, be reasonable. Gracie needs stability, structure, a proper home. Things you simply can't provide right now. I am her father, Jack said. I've allowed you to have temporary guardianship because I thought it was best for her after Caroline died. But temporary means temporary. You've been saying that for 3 years, Margaret pointed out. Meanwhile, you're living in a motel working odd jobs. That's no life for a teenage girl. I have a job now, Jack countered. A good one with the construction company in Columbia. I start next week. In Columbia, Robert emphasized. Hours away from Charleston, from Gracie's school, from her friends. Actually, Gracie interrupted, her voice small but determined. I hate my school, and I don't really have friends there, not real ones. This seemed to take the Bennetts by surprise. Gracie, that's simply not true, Margaret said. What about Eliza and Samantha? You've known them since kindergarten. They're not my friends anymore, Gracie said flatly. They think I'm weird now because of Mom dying. No one knows what to say to me, so they just don't say anything. Lila's heart ached for the girl. She knew what it was like to be an outsider. To have people look at you differently because of circumstances beyond your control. Even if that were true, Robert said dismissively, changing schools wouldn't solve the problem. You need consistency, not more upheaval. I need my dad, Gracie said, her voice cracking. I need to be with him, in a real home, not just seeing him on weekends. Jack squeezed her shoulder. And that's what's going to happen, he assured her. I've been looking at apartments in Columbia. As soon as I find the right one, we have a place to stay, Gracie cut in. Looking directly at her grandparents, she added, Lila invited us to live at the farm, for as long as we need to. All eyes turned to Lila, who felt a flush creeping up her neck. Is this true? Jack asked, looking both surprised and a little embarrassed. Yes, Lila confirmed. The house has plenty of room. You and Gracie would be welcome to stay until you find a place of your own. Robert Bennett laughed, a short, humorless sound. This is ridiculous. You barely know this woman, Jack. And now you're considering moving in with her? It's not like that, Jack started to protest. Isn't it? Margaret asked sharply. Are we supposed to believe it's just a coincidence that your high school sweetheart shows up after all these years, buys your family farm, and now wants you and Gracie to move in with her? It's completely inappropriate. I'd have separate rooms, Gracie piped up as if that were the issue. Dad would too. It's a big house. Jack looked at Lila, his expression a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. It's a generous offer, he said carefully, but I'm not sure. You can't be serious, Robert interrupted. We will not allow Gracie to move into some run-down farmhouse with a woman we don't know. That's not your decision to make, Jack said, his voice taking on an edge. Gracie is my daughter. I decide what's best for her. Really? Margaret raised an eyebrow. And where were you when she needed you 3 years ago? When she cried herself to sleep every night? When she refused to eat? We were the ones who got her through that, not you. Jack flinched as if she'd struck him physically. That's not fair. It's entirely fair, Robert said coldly. You abandoned your responsibilities when Caroline died. You fell apart. You let your grief take precedence over your daughter's needs. Stop it, Gracie shouted, tears streaming down her face. Stop saying those things about Dad. He was sad because Mom died. He didn't abandon me. Lila stepped forward, unable to stay silent any longer. Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, I understand your concerns. You love Gracie and want what's best for her. But speaking as someone who lost their own mother at a young age, I can tell you that what Gracie needs most right now is her father. With all due respect, Ms. Monroe, Robert said stiffly, you are not part of this family. Your opinion is irrelevant. She is relevant to me, Gracie insisted, moving to stand beside Lila. She listens to me. She doesn't treat me like I'm going to break. And she doesn't talk about Mom like she was some kind of saint. Margaret gasped. Gracie, how can you say such a thing? Because it's true. Gracie's voice rose. You never let me just remember Mom as she was. You've turned her into this perfect person who never did anything wrong. But she wasn't perfect. She got mad sometimes. She burned dinner. She and Dad had fights. She was real. The room fell silent, everyone stunned by Gracie's outburst. Oh, sweetheart, Jack said finally, his voice thick with emotion. Your mom was real. Wonderfully, beautifully real. I know, Gracie said, wiping at her tears. That's why I miss her so much, not because she was perfect, but because she was my mom. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. We just want to keep her memory alive for you. I don't need help remembering her, Gracie said gently. I need help figuring out how to live without her, and I need my dad for that. Jack pulled his daughter into a hug, holding her tight as she cried against his chest. Over her head, his eyes met Lila's, filled with a mixture of pain and determination. We're going to figure this out, he promised Gracie. Together. Robert and Margaret exchanged glances, something unspoken passing between them. Finally, Robert cleared his throat. Perhaps we've been overzealous in our desire to protect Gracie, he admitted reluctantly. But you must understand, Jack. She's all we have left of Caroline. I do understand, Jack said, and I'm grateful for everything you've done for her. But it's time for us to be a family again, just the two of us. And where will you live? Margaret asked, but the fight had gone out of her voice. This construction job, is it even steady work? It's a 6-month contract to start, Jack explained. Good pay, benefits. If I do well, they'll keep me on permanently. And in the meantime, Robert pressed. Jack looked at Lila, a question in his eyes. She nodded slightly. In the meantime, Jack said, we'll stay at the farm. It's a good place for Gracie. She loves it there. And it will give us time to find our own place in Columbia. The Bennetts didn't look happy about this solution, but they seemed to recognize they were fighting a losing battle. We expect to see her regularly, Margaret stipulated. Holidays, some weekends. Of course, Jack agreed. You're her grandparents. You'll always be an important part of her life. Gracie pulled away from her father, wiping her eyes. Can I go? Pack my stuff now. I want to go home with Dad. Home. The word hung in the air, weighted with meaning. The Bennett's house had been Gracie's home for 3 years, but it had never truly felt like hers. The farm, despite belonging to Lila now, still held the essence of home for both Gracie and Jack. Yes, Margaret said, her voice tight with unshed tears. I'll help you. As Gracie and her grandmother left the room, Robert fixed Jack with a stern, Look, don't make us regret this decision. I won't, Jack promised. She's the most important thing in the world to me. Robert's gaze shifted to Lila. And you, Miss Munro, what exactly are your intentions in all this? Lila met his gaze steadily. To help a friend, to give Gracie and Jack a safe place to rebuild. Their relationship, nothing more. But even as she said the words, Lila knew they weren't entirely true. Her feelings for Jack were complicated, a blend of old memories and new impressions. But now wasn't the time to examine those feelings too closely. Robert seemed to read something in her expression, but he merely nodded. I suppose time will tell. An hour later, Lila drove back to the farm alone. Jack and Gracie would follow in his truck once they had packed her things. The sudden turn of events left Lila feeling both exhilarated and terrified. What had she done, inviting them to live with her? How would this change the delicate balance they had established? By the time Jack's truck rolled up the driveway, Lila had prepared the 2 spare bedrooms. She'd put fresh sheets on the beds, cleared out old boxes, and even found a desk in the attic that would work perfectly in Gracie's room for homework. Nice, Gracie said, as she surveyed her new space. It's bigger than my room at Grandma and Grandpa's. We can paint it any color you want, Lila offered. Make it really yours. Blue, Gracie said immediately. Like the sky on a clear day. Lila smiled. Blue it is. Jack stood in the doorway looking uncomfortable. Lila, can we talk? Once Gracie settled, his serious tone made Lila nervous. Of course. While Gracie unpacked, Lila and Jack sat on the back porch, the evening light casting long shadows across the fields. I want to be clear about something, Jack began. This arrangement, it's temporary. I don't want you to feel obligated to house us indefinitely. I know, Lila assured him, and I don't feel obligated. I want to help. This house, your family's house, it has enough space for all of us. It makes sense. Jack ran a hand through his hair. It's your house now. You need to remember that. Remember, I don't want you feeling like an outsider in your own home. I won't, Lila promised, but there's something you should know. Jack looked at her expectantly. After you left today, I did some thinking, Lila said carefully, about the farm, about what it means to you and Gracie, and I've made a decision. What kind of decision? Lila took a deep breath. I want to offer you a partnership in the farm. Jack's eyes widened. What? I have some money saved from my divorce settlement, Lila explained. Enough to invest in making this place productive again. But I don't know the first thing about farming. You do. It's in your blood. Lila. I can't accept. I'm not offering charity, Lila interrupted. I'm proposing a business arrangement. You provide the expertise, I provide the capital. We split the profits. It would give you a stable income, a chance to rebuild what you lost. Jack stared at her, clearly stunned by the offer. Why would you do this? Lila hesitated, then decided on honesty. Because I've spent most of my life running from the past, from the shame of what my father did, from the pain of losing you. I'm tired of running, Jack. I want to build something lasting, something good, and I think we could do that together. Jack was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. I need to think about it, he said finally. It's a big decision. Take all the time you need, Lila said. The offer stands regardless of whether you and Gracie stay here temporarily or not. Later that night, after a simple dinner and an impromptu tour of the property, Lila lay awake in her bedroom, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of other people in her house. Gracie's light footsteps as she went to the bathroom, Jack's deeper voice as he called goodnight to his daughter. It had been so long since she'd shared a living space with anyone. There was comfort in it, but anxiety too. She had acted impulsively today, offering her home, proposing a business partnership. What was she doing? Was she trying to recreate the past, to make up for what had been lost? A soft knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Lila, are you awake?" Jack's voice low and hesitant. She sat up, reaching for her robe. "Yes, come in." Jack opened the door but remained in the doorway. He had changed into a t-shirt and pajama pants, his feet bare on the wooden floor. In the dim light from the hallway, he looked younger, less burdened. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said quietly, "for everything you did today, for being there for Gracie, for offering us a place to stay." "You're welcome," Lila said simply. "There's something else," Jack added, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Something I've been wanting to ask you since I found out about the letter." Lila's heart began to race. "What is it?" "If I had gotten that letter," Jack said slowly, "if I had known that you were coming back, would you have?" The question hung in the air between them, weighted with 25 years of what-ifs. "Yes," Lila answered without hesitation. "I would have come back to you, Jack, despite everything." Jack nodded, absorbing this. "Good night, Lila," he said finally, his voice soft. "Good night, Jack." After he closed the door, Lila lay back down, a single tear trailing down her cheek. Not a tear of sadness, but of release, a truth finally spoken aloud after being held in her heart for so long. The next few weeks fell into a surprising rhythm. Jack started his job in Colombia, commuting the hour each way. Gracie enrolled in the local high school, where she quickly made friends with a group of girls who shared her interest in photography. Lila continued her work on the house, now with enthusiastic help from both Coltons. Every evening they shared dinner at the big kitchen table, talking about their days, making plans for the farm, gradually becoming something that felt remarkably like a family. On weekends, Jack worked on the neglected outbuildings, repairing the barn roof, fixing fences, clearing overgrown fields. Lila often worked alongside him, learning skills her city life had never required. Their conversations flowed easily, sometimes serious, sometimes light-hearted, always comfortable. Gracie spent hours in the rose garden, expanding it with new varieties, studying gardening books, following in her mother's footsteps while making it her own. She had hung photos of Caroline in her bedroom, not the formal portraits her grandparents preferred, but candid shots of her mother laughing, gardening, living. "I think she would have liked you," Gracie told Lila one afternoon as they worked together in the garden. "Mom was good at seeing the best in people. I wish I could have met her," Lila replied honestly. "She sounds like an extraordinary woman." "She was," Gracie said, a bittersweet smile on her face. "But so are you, in a different way." The comment caught Lila by surprise, a warm feeling spreading through her chest. She had grown to love this perceptive, resilient girl who reminded her so much of Jack. Jack, meanwhile, had been thinking about Lila's partnership offer. He raised it again one evening after Gracie had gone to bed. "I've been doing some research," he said, spreading papers out on the kitchen table, "looking into small-scale organic farming. There's a growing market for it, especially with restaurants in Charleston and Columbia." Lila leaned over to look at his notes. "You think we could make it work?" "I do," Jack nodded. "It would take time and a lot of work. We'd need to start small, focus on high-value crops. But yes, I think we could build something sustainable here." "So you're accepting my offer?" Lila asked, hope rising in her voice. "With one change," Jack said. "I don't want to be your employee or even just your business partner. I want to buy back into the farm. Gradually, over time." Lila understood immediately. "You want to reclaim your family's legacy?" "Part of it, at least," Jack confirmed. "For Gracie, for future generations of Coltons." "I think that's a wonderful idea," Lila said softly. "We can draw up an agreement whenever you're ready." Jack reached across the table, taking her hand. "Thank you, Lila, for understanding what this means to me." His touch sent a familiar warmth through her. Over the weeks of living together, they had carefully maintained boundaries, both physical and emotional, but something was shifting between them, a gradual thawing of the walls they had built around their hearts. A week later, Jack came home with news. "I ran into Tim today," he said as they cleared the dinner dishes. "At the hardware store in Columbia." Lila tensed. "How did that go?" "About as well as you'd expect," Jack said wryly. "Awkward, tense, but we talked. Really talked, maybe for the first time in years, about the letter." Jack nodded. "Among other things, he apologized for what it's worth, said he's regretted his decision many times over the years." "Do you believe him?" Jack thought for a moment. "I do, actually. People make mistakes, especially when they're young and hurt. I'm not saying what he did was right, but I understand why he did it." "That's very forgiving of you," Lila observed. Jack shrugged. "Life's too short to hold on to old resentments. My brother is the only immediate family I have left, besides Gracie. I don't want to waste any more years being angry at him." Lila was struck by how much Jack had changed from the angry, bitter man who had shown up on her porch that rainy day. There was a peace about him now, an acceptance that hadn't been there before. "He asked about you," Jack added. "Wanted to know if you were still at the farm." "And what did you tell him?" A smile played at the corners of Jack's mouth. "I told him you were right where you belonged." The words hung in the air between them, laden with meaning neither of them was quite ready to acknowledge. The following Saturday, Lila went into town for groceries. As she was loading bags into her car, a voice called her name. She turned to see Vanessa Rothschild approaching, her expression unreadable. "Hello, Vanessa," Lila said cautiously, remembering their last encounter. "I hear Gracie and Jack are living with you now," Vanessa said without preamble. "Yes, they are," Lila confirmed. "Temporarily, while Jack gets established at his new job." Vanessa studied her face. "My parents are devastated, you know. They feel like they've lost Gracie all over again." "I'm sorry for their pain," Lila said, sincerely. "But Gracie needs her father, and Jack needs his daughter." "And where do you fit into all this?" Vanessa asked bluntly. "Are you trying to replace my sister?" The accusation stung, but Lila kept her voice calm. "No one could ever replace Caroline. Gracie's memories of her mother are precious, and Jack loved her deeply. I would never try to change that. But you're in love with him," Vanessa said. It wasn't a question. Lila hesitated, then decided on honesty. "I have feelings for Jack, yes. Feelings that started when we were 16 and have somehow survived 25 years of separation. But I'm not pushing him into anything. He and Gracie need time to heal, to rebuild their relationship. Whatever happens between Jack and me will happen in its own time if it's meant to." Something in Vanessa's expression softened slightly. "Caroline used to say that Jack carried an old wound, something from before they met that never quite healed. I think she knew it was you." "I'm sorry," Lila said, not knowing what else to say. "Caroline loved him," Vanessa continued, "completely. And he loved her too, I believe that. But maybe there was always a piece of his heart that belonged to someone else." Lila felt tears prick at her eyes. "I never wanted to cause anyone pain. Not then, not now." "I know," Vanessa said. Surprising. Lila with the admission. "My parents can be as overwhelming in their grief, but they love Gracie fiercely. Don't shut them out of her life." "Never," Lila promised. "Gracie calls them every night. She's visiting them next weekend. They will always be her grandparents, an important part of her life." Vanessa nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Tell her Aunt Vanessa says hello, and tell her I'm glad she's happy at the farm." As Vanessa walked away, Lila felt as if another piece of the complicated puzzle that was her new life had fallen into place. That night, after Gracie had gone to bed, Lila found Jack sitting on the back porch, looking up at the stars. Without a word, she sat down beside him on the steps. "I ran into Vanessa today," she said, after a comfortable silence. "And?" Jack asked. "I think she's starting to accept the situation," Lila said. "She asked me to tell Gracie hello." Jack nodded. "That's progress." Vanessa was always the reasonable one in Caroline's family. The Bennetts are good people, but they can be rigid. "They love Gracie," Lila pointed out, "and they miss her." "I know," Jack sighed. "I'm trying to be understanding, to include them as much as possible." They fell silent again, the night air cool around them, the scent of roses floating. "On the breeze, I've been thinking about something," Jack said finally. "Something important." Lila turned to look at him. "What is it?" "The letter you wrote," he began. "The one I never received. Would you tell me what it said? All of it?" Lila took a deep breath. After all these years, could she remember the words she had poured her heart into on that desperate night? "I wrote that I loved you," she said softly. "That leaving town was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I explained about my father, about the money he took, about how ashamed and scared I was." Jack listened intently, his eyes never leaving her face. "I told you that I'd come back as soon as I could," Lila continued, "that I'd write when we were settled somewhere. I asked you to wait for me, to believe in what we had." "And I would have," Jack said quietly. "If I'd known, I would have waited." "But then you might never have met Caroline," Lila reminded him. "Never had Gracie." "True," Jack acknowledged, "and I can't regret that. Caroline was a gift in my life. Gracie is the best thing that ever happened to me." "Then maybe things worked out the way they were supposed to," Lila suggested, "even if the path was more painful than it needed to be." Jack reached over, taking her hand in his. "Do you believe in second chances, Lila?" Her heart quickened at his touch. "I'm starting to." Jack's eyes, so familiar and yet still capable of making her breath catch, held a warmth she hadn't seen in years. "I never stopped loving you," he admitted, "even when I thought you had abandoned me, even when I was happily married to Caroline. There was always a part of me that belonged to the girl who left without saying goodbye." "Jack," Lila whispered, overwhelmed by his confession. "I'm not saying this to pressure you," he added quickly, "or to rush into anything. We're different people now. We need time to get to know each other again, and Gracie has to be my priority." "I understand," Lila assured him, "and I agree. There's no hurry. We have time." Jack's smile was tender as he squeezed her hand. Time. That's something we never had before. The next morning, Lila was awakened by a loud knock at the front door. Groggily, she pulled on her robe and made her way downstairs. Through the window, she could see a mail truck in the driveway. Opening the door, she found a postal worker holding a package. "Lila Monroe?" he asked. "Yes, that's me." "Special delivery," he said, handing her a small battered package. "This has been bouncing around the system for a while. Return to sender," but they could never locate the original sender. Confused, Lila thanked him and took the package inside. It was about the size of a shoebox, wrapped in brown paper that had clearly seen better days. The address label was faded, almost illegible, but she could make out her name and an address she hadn't lived at in decades. With trembling fingers, she unwrapped the package. Inside was a dusty box and a yellowed envelope with her name on it. Written in a handwriting she recognized immediately, Jack's handwriting. Her heart pounding, Lila opened the envelope first. Inside was a letter dated 3 months after she had left town, 3 months after she had given Tim her letter to deliver to Jack. "Dear Lila, I don't know if this will ever reach you. Your phone has been disconnected, and no one seems to know where your family has gone, but I had to try to reach you to understand why you left without a word. I keep replaying our last day together, trying to figure out what I did wrong. Why you would just disappear from my life. We talked about forever, about plans for the future. Was it all just words to you? I need to know why, Lila. I deserve that much. If you get this letter, please write back or call. My number hasn't changed. I miss you. Every day." Jack tears streamed down Lila's face as she read the words written 25 years ago by a heartbroken boy. Below the signature was a postscript PS. "I'm returning something that belongs to you, something precious you left behind." With shaking hands, Lila opened the box. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a small wooden rose, intricately carved. She gasped, memories flooding back. Jack had made it for her during their summer together, spending hours getting every detail just right. "A rose that will never fade," he had told her, "just like my love for you." She had kept it on her nightstand, but in the chaos of their sudden departure, it must have been left behind. "Lila, what is it?" She turned to find Jack standing in the doorway, concern etched on his face. Wordlessly, she handed him the letter. Then the wooden rose. Jack read the letter, his expression shifting from confusion to astonishment. "I remember writing this," he said wonderingly. "I sent it to your old address, hoping it would be forwarded. When it came back unopened months later, I gave up." "And the rose," Lila said, her voice thick with emotion. "You kept it? All this time?" Jack shook his head. "No, I packed it with the letter, sent them together." He ran his fingers over the carved petals. "I spent so long on this. Wanted it to be perfect for you." "It is perfect," Lila whispered. "And now it's found its way back to me, just like you have." Their eyes met, decades of misunderstandings and missed chances falling away. Jack stepped forward, cupping her face in his hands with infinite tenderness. "I think," he said softly, "that sometimes life gives us a second chance, if we're brave enough to take it." And then he was kissing her, and Lila was 16 again, experiencing first love, but also 41, with the wisdom to recognize what she had found. What she had, against all odds, found again. "Gross," said a voice from the doorway, "but also kind of cute." They broke apart to find Gracie watching them, a smile playing at her lips despite her teasing tone. "Sorry," Jack said, though he didn't look particularly repentant. "We didn't mean to—" "It's okay, Dad," Gracie interrupted. "I'm not blind. I've seen how you two look at each other." Her expression grew more serious. "Mom would want you to be happy. She told me that before she died. That I should make sure you didn't stay sad forever." Jack's eyes filled with tears. "She said that?" Gracie nodded. "She loved you that much." Jack held out his arm, and Gracie came to him, allowing herself to be pulled into a three-way hug with Lila. "So, Gracie said after a moment, does this mean we're staying at the farm? For real?" Jack looked at Lila, a question in his eyes. "I hope so," Lila said softly. "If that's what you both want." "I want us to be a family," Gracie said simply, "whatever that looks like." Family. The word filled Lila's heart with a joy she had never expected to feel. After all the years of loneliness, of feeling like she didn't belong anywhere, she had finally found her way home. Later that day, Jack took her for a walk through the fields, their hands intertwined as if they had never been separated. "There's something I need to show you," he said, leading her to a small rise overlooking the farm. At the top stood a massive oak tree, its branches spreading wide to create a natural canopy. "Our tree," Lila breathed, recognizing it immediately. "It's still here." "It is," Jack confirmed, "and so is this." He pointed to the trunk, where carved into the bark were their initials inside a heart. JC plus LM. The carving had weathered with the tree, the edges softened by time, but still clearly visible. "You carved that the last time we were here together," Lila remembered. "The day before I left." Jack nodded. "I used to come here after you were gone, sit under this tree and wonder where you were, what you were doing. And now we're here together again," Lila said, leaning against him, "under the same tree." "Full circle," Jack agreed, wrapping his arm around her. "Though I think it's more of a spiral than a circle. We've come back to the same place, but we're different people now, shaped by everything that's happened in between. Wiser, I hope," Lila smiled. "More patient, more appreciative of what we've found." They stood together as the sun began to set, casting golden light across the fields where the wild roses grew. The farmhouse in the distance, once a symbol of loss for Jack, now represented a new beginning for all of them. "I love you, Lila Monroe," Jack said softly. "I loved you when we were 16, and I love you now, with a lifetime of experience between then and now." "And I love you, Jack Colton," Lila replied, her heart full to bursting. "Enough to wait 25 years to find you again." Jack pulled her close, his arms strong and secure around her. In that embrace was a promise of second chances, of healing, of a future neither of them had dared to imagine. "We should get back," Jack said after a while, though he seemed reluctant to break the moment. "Gracie will wonder where we've disappeared to." Hand in hand, they walked back toward the farmhouse. The rose garden came into view, where Gracie knelt, among the blooms carefully tending to a new bush she had planted that morning. "Look who's here," Jack called to his daughter. Gracie looked up, a wide smile spreading across her face when she saw them together, hands intertwined. "Finally," she exclaimed, getting to her feet and brushing dirt from her knees. "I was beginning to think you two would never figure it out." Lila laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Your dad and I have had a lot to work through." 25 years worth, Jack added, his thumb gently stroking the back of Lila's hand. "Well, I'm glad you sorted it out," Gracie said. Her expression grew more serious. "So what happens now? With us? With the farm?" Jack exchanged a glance with Lila before responding. "Now we build something new," he said. "Together, all three of us, a family," Lila added softly. Gracie's eyes brightened. "I'd like that." She gestured to the rose bush she had been planting. "This is a special kind of rose. Mum always wanted to add it to the garden, but never got the chance. It's called New Dawn." "That seems appropriate," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. "I think so too," Gracie agreed. "For all of us." 6 months later, the farm was beginning to transform. The fields that had lain fallow for years now sprouted with organic vegetables destined for restaurants in Charleston and Columbia. The old barn had been renovated into a small market where local farmers could sell their produce. The rose garden had doubled in size, becoming a local attraction that Gracie proudly guided visitors through on weekends. Jack had fully moved into the construction company, earning a promotion to project manager. But his real passion was the farm, where he and Lila worked side by side, learning from each other, building something sustainable for the future. Gracie had blossomed at her new school, making real friends who often visited the farm. Her relationship with her grandparents had improved too, once the Bennetts saw how happy she was. They visited regularly, gradually warming to the new family configuration. Even Tim had made amends, coming to the farm with his wife and children for Sunday dinners. The brothers were slowly rebuilding their relationship, the old wounds beginning to heal. On a perfect autumn day, much like the one when Lila had first arrived at the farm, Jack took her back to their oak tree. Beneath its spreading branches, with the setting sun painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, he knelt on one knee. "Lila Monroe," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion shining in his eyes. "We've waited 25 years and traveled, separate paths to find our way back to each other. I don't want to waste another day. Will you marry me?" The ring he held was simple but beautiful, a rose gold band with a small diamond at its center. "Yes," Lila answered without hesitation, tears of joy streaming down her face. 1,000 times yes. When they returned to the farmhouse, Gracie was waiting on the porch, as if she had known what was about to happen. She took one look at their faces and let out a whoop of joy, rushing forward to hug them both. "It's about time," she exclaimed. Later that evening, as the three of them sat on the porch watching the stars appear in the night sky, Lila felt a sense of contentment unlike anything she had ever known. The path that had led her back to this place, to Jack and to Gracie, had been long and winding, filled with pain and loss. But somehow, against all odds, it had brought her exactly where she was meant to be. In the distance, she could see the rose garden, where Caroline's roses still bloomed alongside new varieties that Gracie had planted. There was something beautiful in that continuity, that honoring of the past while embracing the future. "What are you thinking about?" Jack asked softly, his arm warm around her shoulders. "About how life surprises you," Lila answered. "About how sometimes the things you think you've lost forever find their way back to you when you least expect it. Like a wooden rose that travels 25 years to return to its owner," Jack smiled. "Or a letter that never arrived but still managed to tell its story," Lila added. "Or a family that was always meant to be," Gracie chimed in, leaning against her father's other side. The three of them sat together as night fell completely, the stars bright above the farmhouse that had seen so much history, so much loss and love and renewal. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new work to be done. The farm, like their new family, was still a work in progress, growing stronger with each passing day. But for now, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. The wild roses had found their place to grow, to thrive, to bloom against all odds. And so had they. The end.